was trying to sync cameras the other night when I was recording Ashley's thing for the dress. I had 3 cameras set up, and I didn't have much access to stuff, so I had 2 phones and a camcorder. And like the camcorder was over the other side of the room, and the 2 phones were like different heights and stuff. So I'm running around trying to clap as loud as I possibly can to try. And in the end, I just didn't do anything with the recordings, and nobody's asked. So just like, as long as they're there, nobody needs to ever see them, right? I don't know.
I feel like that's going back to the Paul Matt episode where we all clapped at different times, although we tried to synchronise it the same. We're just a bit useless when it comes to...
God. Right, who's doing the intro?
Well,
Me?
introduce yourself.
It is 2023.
The weird thing is since about Sunday at 3 o'clock, yesterday at 3 o'clock for those watching, the voice that I've heard the most in my life is
mine.
Just yours, and so I've become quite familiar with the voice, despite the fact I've only met you an hour and a half ago. So it's quite odd. So yeah, we'll do an intro rather than just go straight into it.
That makes sense.
So today we are joined by Michael Park.
Hello,
podcaster,
historian.
Well, I think the
enthusiastic amateur.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. I think that's doing yourself a disservice.
Oh, thank you.
Social media manager.
Yep.
Club Media, Broomhill.
Yep. I mean, you name it, I'll do it for money. And that is not a restrictive list.
We've got cameras here.
It is recorded.
Well,
that's fact. So, okay then, let's start from the fact that Daryl looks different this time.
Yeah.
But
you swap seats.
I know.
There's no continuity in this. I'm the only person that constantly sits in the same place now.
Yeah, we're just hot desking it with seats. But anyway, yeah, Michael, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a genuine pleasure to come on and chat to you.
Yeah, so how did you actually get into the whole podcasting thing then?
Oh, the whole podcasting thing. How far back and how embarrassing do you want me to go?
Oh,
beginning and embarrassing.
Yeah,
right, okay. So I'm about 8 or 9 years old, staying over at my best friend's house, and he's got an Iowa stack hi-fi system.
Oh, yeah.
That I think everybody's mum and dad had in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And he also has these 2 little crappy microphones that almost look like Thunderbirds communicators.
Yeah.
And we sat down one night and we were like, hang on, if we plug this into this port and record onto a cassette tape, which for those of you who are younger is a roll of magnetic tape that goes from reel to reel, and you have to wind it with a pencil if it gets all near MP3s anyway, etc.
It's odd that we have to explain that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Terrifying.
Yeah, well, it's the old story of my kids a year or so ago. My fiance got a letter, and our wee boy went like, "Why is that email printed out?" So
you try to explain what a fax was to him.
Oh God, no, not.
It's an email.
It's not. I'm not even sure I understand what fax.
It seemed a bit superfluous, really.
Yeah, it's like send a letter via phone. Anyway, so yeah, we realised that we could record our own little radio shows and use the 3 CD changer to queue up tracks. So we made these little radio shows that he tells me still exist somewhere, and I am terrified of them ever turning up. I'm pretty sure he's using them just in case he needs blackmail material on me for something. So we would make these little radio shows, and I always kind of wanted to do more with that. And then when I was, about 17, 18, something like that, I started volunteering at UCA Radio, which was like UWS. That was their air campus before it was here. So I'd done student radio, and then I helped found the student radio station at Glasgow Caledonian, which is still going. Thank you very much. I don't think it's like named the Michael Park Memorial Studio, but it should be. And yeah, I've always like wanted to do radio and make radio and stuff. So when I graduated, podcasts were starting to become a thing. So we started making a wee football podcast that was borderline popular for a wee while. I once got to go on BBC World Service and say shite, because it was called, like, it was named after former Celtic defender Raphael Shite.
Oh.
And they asked me like how you pronounced it, and I told them, and they cut me off. So I was like, well, you know, fundamentally, I'm like, it's not my fault that that's the guy's name.
No.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so we did that for a few years, and kind of went away from it for a wee while and did some other stuff, and then kind of 2018 came back to it, and after having listened to a lot of American public radio and thought, I could do that. Turns out I can't.
And that was the This Is Scotland historic podcast.
Yeah, so Scotland came out of years and years ago, maybe like 2012, 2013, something like that. I ran like a wee architectural history blog about Glasgow, and I was like, I'm quite a dweeby person, like this will come out over the course of the podcast, like I'm a bit of a nerd. And yeah, I was running that, and eventually like I was struggling for a way to kind of put across how interesting I found these buildings that don't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of thought, well, if you take history and make it so that you're not trying to illustrate it, and you're trying to put people in a situation and give them the capacity to imagine it almost for themselves, then you're doing that. So what better way to do that than with audio? And, you know, like, audio is I love audio.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why on earth you would try and show something when you could tell people. I think that's the opposite of most people that do this kind of thing.
Mhm.
But
I think it's a more difficult thing to do well, because
yeah.
pictures or videos are what they are, but to be able to take a story and make it relatable and understandable and also succinct without being verbose for the sake of being verbose is a very difficult thing to achieve. And I think your podcast, having like binged on them like for the last 24 hours, does that very well. And that's the thing. It's one of the biggest things about it is it's its biggest flaw and its biggest asset in some senses. They're too short.
Yeah.
But because I'm getting into it, but you're so good at taking that story and condensing it.
Yeah, there's a little element of, when I started making Scotland, I thought about making it, like, I sat down, and it's probably the first and only thing I've ever like planned out.
Right.
And I kind of thought, do I sit here and try and tell the entire history of Scotland in order from the start, or
right,
do
okay.
I go for, you know, like your hardcore histories where you've got like a 5-hour episode about one small aspect of history? And I was like, okay, these things have their place and they're interesting in their own right, but I kind of like I think specifically about shows like Criminal and 99% Invisible, and to a lesser extent Lore, which I low-key hate but understand why it's a good
Successful,
podcast. Yeah. So like the aspects of that I really liked were the fact that there's thousands of stories that they can just pick from at random.
Yeah.
And that's what I really liked about my show, is that I was able to kind of take whatever was interesting me at the time. So you'll notice that as you go through the feed, there's phases where I'm like really into something.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get like, you know, I'll maybe throw in like one episode to cover up the fact that I'm really into World War II spies or something like that, and then there'll be like 3 episodes in a row.
Stories from a train station.
Stories from a train station. Oh, very good. You're not fully back into, like,
Well,
did you start the Wikipedia?
Scotland history fans.
That's something else. But yeah, like, kind of going back to the length of the episodes as well. I thought, well, we could. I keep saying we. Like, I could sit down and make an episode that lasts an hour and tells you absolutely everything about something. But fundamentally, like, I want people to enjoy the episodes more than necessarily learn something.
Right.
I'm
okay.
not necessarily trying to teach you something. If I kind of feel like if you've listened to 15 minutes of something and you find it really interesting, then you might go away and look it up yourself and go further into it and find the aspects of it that interest you.
Yep.
Whereas, like for example, when I make the episodes, I tend not to focus on dates. That's why every episode starts with what the date is,
Mm-hmm.
because then I don't mention it again.
Yeah.
Because after that point, I'm like, right, okay, you can imagine what your idea of
Yeah. That time
13,
period.
yeah, your idea of 1323 or 1926 or whatever it is. You can imagine what you would have felt like to live there.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm asking you to do is suspend your disbelief enough to let me put you in that place.
Yeah.
So I thought like 15 to 20 minutes was kind of a good length for them, because otherwise, it's like you said yourself, Strain, they have the potential to get really baggy. And
It can do. I mean, yeah, but it's you get into they're so good, and I really watch it or listen to it. Because I wouldn't consider myself a big history person, be it Scottish or otherwise. But the fact it's Scottish and the fact there's also, when I flicked through it, I found Jim Clark,
yeah,
F1 driver.
I love that episode.
That
I'm
was-
really
that was the
pleased with
first one
that
I
episode.
I keep on saying listen to, because I knew a little bit about him.
There is a video version of the Jim Clark one.
What is there?
Yeah,
Oh, right,
I
okay.
actually made it like a proper, like used loads of copyrighted content. That is like the number of copyright strikes that video has is, but they're all like Ford Motor Company and they're fine with it as long as you don't make money. But
Yeah.
yeah, like there's a couple of them that I've tried to make into like mini documentaries that just
Right.
have like they just have visuals more than like trying to tell
like
the
a
story in video,
YouTube
but-
video essay.
yeah,
or something.
pretty much. But yeah, like a lot of them follow my own interests. Like I really like motor racing, and I really like. I did one about Johnny De Vries as well.
Right.
That he's not a particularly well. Like he had one season in Formula One, for example, in 1986, possibly. He was Ayrton Senna's teammate at Lotus, and it was basically that he was like Ayrton Senna wanted somebody that he could beat week in, week out, and wouldn't
Yeah, it
wouldn't
wasn't gonna
take
be a
the spotlight
challenger,
from him. So this guy who was like, he was aristocracy, he was like a lord,
Right.
and kind of came in, but he didn't want to be a lord, he wanted to be an F1 driver, and I just found his story really interesting. And it just had so happened that I'd seen in the news that he'd got fined for breaking COVID restrictions during the lockdown. He'd like been, I think he'd been out on a boat or something with his entire family, like going from the coast to his ancestral home or whatever it was on a like little speedboat with loads of people, and the police had essentially like boat pulled him over. I don't know what a boat stop is called, but they'd pulled him over and fined him, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I kind of went back in his story, and it's just these wee things come up, and I'll just kind of jump on them, I guess. But it is kind of, a lot of them do follow my own interest, and that's kind of a lot of the time. I think we like, especially with the F1 ones, it's not probably doesn't fit in with my usual demographic of listeners. But
Okay.
I really like kind of seeing not how far I can push people, but how far people come along with me for the sake of a good story.
Yeah, because if you're someone who sort of religiously goes to each episode as they come out, or you've come across and you start it and you work your way through it, you're going to just, whatever comes out next, you're going to listen to it. It's not as if you're putting out a 2 or 3 hour episode and someone thinks, that subject doesn't resonate with me at all.
Yeah,
It's-
that's kind of the aim. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're always going to get people who just come back and back and back to them.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, I think a lot of the expectation with Scottish history stuff, and there's there's quite a few of us that are making them now, and like there's some really, really, really good like producers that are making these podcasts, and everybody has a slightly different way of coming at it, and a slightly different way of making episodes, and a slightly different idea of things. Like, there's a lot of similarities and there's a lot of crossover between myself and like Stories of Scotland, who are amazing, and a couple other ones. But like, I want to name check the ones that I really like.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's really, it's I think there's something in that sort of marketplace. There's something in that sort of area for everybody. And I think a lot of the expectation of Scottish history podcasts is that it's all going to be battles, or it's all going to be like clans and this sort of like don't get me wrong, a lot of my listeners are in America, and I don't mean this as like a bad thing, but a lot of that like American like genealogy sort of like romanticizing,
Basically Outlander, the podcast.
kinda, yeah. And like I try to shy away from that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And I don't go in, if I cover a battle, like I did an episode that was like about the massacre of Glencoe, but it sort of followed what happened in Game of Thrones, and the like relationship between that and X whatever it is in Game of Thrones that follows that that paradigm, but I can't remember exactly what bit in Game of Thrones it is because I didn't enjoy it that much.
You made it more palatable.
Well,
for
yeah, but it was trying to follow and trying to find a way to show like human sides of these things, because it's, again, like we were saying earlier, it's really easy to go and Robert the Bruce came down onto Bannockburn and he directed his troops here and directed his troops there. Whereas I'd rather tell a story about one guy that was in the middle absolutely crapping his pants because he was about to get run through by an English sword, I find that way more interesting than telling you about the kind of broad strokes of the whole thing. So
it probably makes it more relatable to people because you speak directly to the listener. You refer to them as you, as if they're the main character within the story, which makes it, I don't know, it gives it a bit more of a resonance between you and the story. And if you're talking about someone like a character as opposed to something greater, and just it's too broad to wrap your head around, but everyone can relate to being in a scenario. But trying to imagine what 1,000 people are all feeling at the same time doesn't really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sometimes we look at, there's an episode that I did about Edinburgh Castle, and it was trying to imagine, so we when we were making it, and I say we in this case because it was myself and Mitch Bain who does the music for the podcast, we sat down together after I'd written it and kind of said, like, how are we going to put this across? Because we tried to, like, take somebody from standing on the walls of Edinburgh Castle as a tourist and force them back in time to the point where Edinburgh Castle was first built, or the point where, like, they escape, or when... like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 19 Scottish guys scaled the wall and took it over from the English.
Yes.
Just not for a laugh, but like, rather than try and invade the castle and the rock, they just went and essentially went, well, we'll just take it back by doing this. So we tried to do that, and Mitch came up with this really kind of beautiful, almost like sort of nebula-y, kind of TARDIS-y time travel sound that we used to, like, force people back. And when we first did it, we were a bit like, it's a bit cheesy, like it's maybe a bit much. And then we put it into I recorded the episode and then we dropped it in and put some of Mitch's music around it. And we were like, that actually really works. That's really good. Yeah, we'll just go
inspired.
Yeah, we'll just kind of go with that. And it was lucky. It's great to have like a collaborator like Mitch on stuff like that as well, because he can kind of like, he takes the episode usually after I've recorded it and scores the entire thing. And just because of time, we've not done that so much recently, and it's because I'm terrible at keeping to my own deadlines. But he'll take it and score it and give it this emotion that a lot of things don't have because you're using stock almost over the top of it. So that's a really good element for me as well. That's a really like positive way of dragging somebody into the story and making them feel part of it.
It helps with your kind of the fact that it's a kind of narrative driven kind of.
Yeah, you can force emotional change in people by the tone of the music, and like, you don't have to worry that, if you go on, like, quite a few of the episodes we use Epidemic, which is like a sound library that you pay for, and
it's what we use.
Yeah, like, the stuff's great. Like, the music's really good, and you can download like individual instruments and stuff, and you can really do some really interesting things with it that I like, but you can't get it to a sentence. You can't get it down to almost like the point of a pause or
No, and
And-
that's the beauty of having something scored
Yeah.
as an original piece for a piece of work like that. It's that, where do you go for your information? Because it's so well, it comes across to me as being so well researched.
that's the trick.
And how long does it take? Because okay, you think it's a 50-minute or 20-minute episode, but there's obviously a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to get to that stage.
Yeah. In terms of where I go for information, the starting point is almost always a news article or just surfing Wikipedia.
Right.
Like I am, again, a tedious nerd, and I like to just like click blue links on Wikipedia until I find something that interests me.
Right.
So a lot of the time I'll find a sort of little arbitrary thing in a big, it tends to, you'll start with, say, like using Bannockburn as an example, which is an episode I've never done, so I don't know why I'm picking this. But you'd start with the Battle of Bannockburn, and then you go into like finding. In fact, do you know what? There's an episode of the podcast called The Bruce's Heart, which is about how when Robert the Bruce died, he made the Black Douglas promise that he would take his heart on pilgrimage to Castile in Spain, I think.
Right.
Or he forced them to take it on crusade, I think, or something. So they took it to like Moorish Spain. And that came about because I was sort of looking at Bannockburn and I was almost going, got to do something at some point with it. So and then I got distracted and went down a rabbit hole and I was like, this is really cool. I want to write about that.
Mm-hmm.
But see, you avoiding Bannockburn is you avoiding one of the kind of prerequisite. Oh, it's a Scottish history thing, so it's Scottish history thing of it's going to be about Bannockburn or the Stuart dynasty or something like that.
Yeah, kind of. And honestly, I bet that's me being pig-headed and a bloody nightmare. But to like go back to what you were saying, Struan, when you look at take that Jim Clark episode, for example, which like I'm just going to reference specific episodes so that I can force your listeners to go and listen to mine,
No,
so they know what I'm talking about.
The producer's
the-
favourites.
Yeah, the Jim Clark episode took ages. It took, an episode can take, we generally speaking release one a month,
Mm-hmm.
which is honestly about the rate with other work and stuff that I can
Yeah,
afford
sustainable.
to put. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for 20 minutes of content, you're looking at 30, 40, 50 hours work.
Okay.
Makes
Makes this pale into insignificance.
it's a different thing though. Like, I mean,
No,
you've
absolutely.
got to spend, and a lot of that is just like pissing about on the internet. Like, I'm not saying for a second that I'm sitting surrounded by tomes and all this kind of thing.
No,
Like,
but
you'll
it's
sit and
still
watch
research.
videos and and watch documentaries and get like an idea of how other people view this, view this thing. With the Jim Clark one, I spent a lot of time trying to piece together his life before he became an F1 driver.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was from, he used a lot of information from the Jim Clark Trust and things like that. And I tried to speak to them, but unfortunately, just because it was kind of the tail end of COVID, a lot of their volunteers weren't around and stuff like that. So, not just because they weren't available, just to be clear. So with that kind of thing, it's trying to and again, what I'm trying to do more recently is use other expert voices on. I say other expert voices. Use expert voices on the podcast. So the last produced
It's very
episode.
magnanimous.
Yeah,
of you.
well, that's not what I intended at all. The last produced episode that we did, we've been putting out reruns for a while, was with Graham Stewart, who's a broadcasting historian.
Right.
And I went and interviewed him for the podcast, and we've got a couple of episodes in the works that have interviews with archaeologists and food historians and all that kind of thing. Rather than just hearing me and just hearing featured voices and primary sources, I mean, David has done
I came across
exemplary voice work
I came
on,
across his voice this morning.
yeah, on
Pretending to
Scotland
be people,
quite a few
yeah.
times.
But what if, actually, as a side note, if people recognise the name Graham Stewart, it's because he is off of the BBC. So that was.
I don't like to drop names, Dad.
I know. Of course, yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, that adds a significant amount of time to the production of an episode. And a lot of the time, like I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you hear like the professionally produced ones being like, "Oh, it can take 6 months to produce an episode," and you think, "How is that possible?" And then you actually think, well, if you email somebody and say tentatively, could I have an interview?
Yep.
It might be like 3 months before you actually get to speak to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be the next week or the next day or whatever. But, you know, a lot of the time, these things sort of spread out and other episodes take priority. And at the moment, I thought it would be a really good idea to try and work on 3 at a time so that if I drop interest or need a delay in another, I've got another one to back up. Nightmare. Wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, like keeping to a production schedule with that kind of thing means that you're always kind of working towards the next thing. And recently I've been terrible at that. I do feel a bit guilty coming on your show to talk about my podcast, which I haven't put an episode out of in 4 months. It's been busy, what can I say? But ultimately, you know, you feel like Scotland's just a passion project for me. I don't make anything out of it apart from my own ego.
The passion side of it really comes through.
Oh,
thanks,
Strunt.
I think that, but it makes it very enjoyable to listen to.
You do a history podcast,
Yes, I do.
but surprise.
Shock horror after I've havered on about it for half an hour.
Where did your actual interest in history come from?
Probably, to be honest, where I'm from. Like, I'm from Ayr. I went to primary school in Alloway, and I was like immersed in Burns country. So I was really into Robert Burns as a kid, like in a weird way. Like to the extent that his historical legacy isn't amazing. And I try to like constantly act like I don't love Burns, but I'm always like, anytime I get a chance to, I'll fanboy over him.
Yeah.
So like just being around all these stories and all these, you know, like all these historical sites, all these historical monuments like Burns Cottage and the Old Kirk and Brigadoon and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Seeing that every day when you come out of school or you're going to school is just really quite. It's hard to not be into
Yeah, it's like
history.
you're in the case of like Brigadoon, you're on the set of Tam O'Shanter, basically.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, and it's conscious. Like it's probably in Ayr. Like a lot of towns in Scotland will have this, but in Ayr you feel like you're never quite. Like you know how they say in cities you're only ever like 3 or 4 feet away from a rat.
Yeah.
In Ayr you're only 3 or 4 feet away from a story.
Yeah.
Like there's always something, and my mum used to tell me all of these stories whenever we would like go down the high street, presumably because she wanted to go to Marquis or something, and I wouldn't shut up. But you know, like she would tell me, you know, like stories about the Fish Cross and like the markets that they used to have there and stuff, and she would tell me them in such a way because like her mum and dad would have remembered going. So they would have told her this story that made her feel like she was there, so she would tell me it in a way that made me feel like I was there.
Yeah.
And I think that probably I've always taken that forward and wanted to kind of like, I don't know, I like history that makes you feel part of it. And that's always been a real interest for me. But in terms of like history academically, I was terrible at it. So,
what about history from further afield? Do you interact with sort of world history, or there has to be a person's?
No, not necessarily. Like I watch documentaries constantly and listen to podcasts about history from all over the world, and I'm really interested in world history, but it's not something that. And I think probably like if you listen to Scotland, there are loads of stories that aren't from Scotland. There are quite a few Canadian stories and American stories, Australian, and you know, like there's a couple from like Argentina. In Uruguay and stuff like that, and people that have gone over and made a difference in Panama, like the Darien scheme and this kind of thing. Yeah. So world history is really interesting to me, but it's more so like I enjoy learning about it just because I'm a nerd. So it's not for any content creation purpose.
Just for recreation.
Just for my own recreation. Like my fiance is super into like she runs a tour business that I work for as well. So she is like incredibly into the Tudors and incredibly into like royal history from England and stuff. So we'll watch loads of stuff about that, stuff that I've never had an interest in before I met her, for example.
Yeah.
But I'm now like, oh my god, this is great. I need to know more about, like I need to know more about how Elizabeth I came to the throne and like who was doing what to kind of piss her off and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff really
What's
excites
the
me.
tour company called?
Turid.
It's a
which
Gaelic
is,
word, isn't it?
it's the Gaelic word for the moment where it stops raining, becomes sunny for about 20 seconds, and then starts raining again.
Oh, nice.
So that's the Turid period. I'm mispronouncing that because I'm from Ayrshire and Gaelic is not for us.
No.
But yeah, it's a very nice name. But
Nice.
Turid Tours, if you want to Google it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that operates from Glasgow, but also
Yeah,
also in Edinburgh.
Yep, do tours of Glasgow, tours of Edinburgh. It's a private tour company, so to be honest, clients can message her and kind of say, wherever they want to go in Scotland, and we'll find a way to facilitate it. So, and that's a really fun element of the company as well, because you'll not have a tour prepared for somewhere, and somebody will be like, "I want to go here," and you're like, "Yes."
We'd
Like-
like to learn about this
So,
place.
so you've got like, say that it's like 3 months hence or whatever, and you're like, "I've got 3 months to just
Yeah.
nerd out on this thing."
This is where you do eventually get a Bannock burn, and you're like, I'm gonna have to engage for this, aren't I?
I don't know why I feel like I seem so hostile towards Bannockburn. You know what I mean? Like
I think it's because it's almost like a Scottish cliche.
Cliche.
yeah, like I think that a lot of these things, especially because of the way that they're portrayed in media
Mm.
or the way that they're portrayed in films and stuff,
Yeah.
makes you kind of, as a Scottish person, a wee bit kind of like weird towards them. Like that they're important and that they're vital to our history, but also other people who are like watching things like that, and like I'm talking specifically about Braveheart.
Yeah,
Like the number of people that go into Scottish history expecting that to be accurate.
Oh, like the Battle of Stirling Bridge that was famously a field with a transit van driving along the background.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, that transit van was responsible for all of the logistics of the Scottish Army at the time.
Actually,
So,
it was incredible.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why the English lost, because they were like, what the hell is that?
They didn't have a tranny van.
Yeah, exactly.
So you grew up in Ayr,
Yes.
Alloway Primary.
Yep.
Kyle?
Yep.
And then following that, you did a degree in something.
Yeah, I did a degree in risk management at Glasgow Caledonian University, which was a joke. It wasn't.
But the degree of the university.
You pick. It's not like Cali was a really good uni, and it was like it's unfairly maligned in my opinion. But
It's because it's what you class as a post-92 institution.
exactly, the degree itself was not something that I was interested in, and therefore I don't feel like it's fair for me to
Was this a
comment
case
on
of
it one way or the other.
going through UCAS and going, I saw that, I'll just pick these
I
things? Or-
wanted to be a journalist, and
They got journalism at Cali.
there's 6 choices that you have to make when you apply through UCAS, for those of you that don't remember. And I applied for 5 journalism and writing courses and 1 wild card, because my guidance teacher and another individual in my life who will remain nameless told me that nobody would want to employ somebody with a journalism degree. And because I was a kid, I listened to them, and then came out at
With business
21 with
management.
this useless degree. And I mean, like, within a year it was useless because all of the international standards and things for these things change constantly.
yeah.
So you come out literally, unless you go into a job straight away,
Yeah.
you can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So came out, didn't want to do anything with it, got into doing like writing snarky internet gossip and stuff like that, and just like doing web content to pay bills and that kind
Yeah.
of thing, and I've kind of done that ever since. Not the snarky internet gossip, but
To actually jump back to your thing about your guidance teacher and that at school telling you no one will basically hire you, well, a creative degree. That's the same with my experience as well. But I basically, it was 2 fingers up to them, and I still picked the. And
Yeah, I
I
mean,
didn't do
fair.
any because at my secondary school, Prestwick Academy, boo hiss. It was basically, unless you wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, then they just really didn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's been, I'm 35 now, to age me.
I'm sorry for your loss.
I know, right?
As of Sunday
my,
as well, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was my birthday yesterday as we're recording this, so my existential crisis is now 12 hours behind me.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was at school, the standard of, and I don't know whether it was just this one guy, but my guidance teacher misled me so far, and I'm really, like, I will never forgive the guy. And I'm sure he's probably, because I'm at that age, I'm sure he's probably passed away now, and I'm not going to give, like,
Yeah.
Well, you
Give
say
out
that,
to
Michael,
him.
but
He's here tonight. Oh.
The ghost of him anyway.
I saw you had a red jotter. I didn't realise it was This Is Your Life.
I know.
But ultimately, yeah, like I was really, it's not until, like I was maybe like 25, 26 or something, I was like, I listened to that guy because I assumed he had more life experience than me. But see, if I think about it, he probably came out of school, went to teacher training college, became a teacher, became a guidance
That
teacher, and
wasn't
then
his life.
started telling kids what to do with their lives. And I was,
Yeah.
so I would hope that guidance teaching, like, funnily enough, before I went back to uni during COVID, and now attend UWS, and I'm doing radio and TV and something that I love. But before I did that, I was at such a loss for what to do that I thought about becoming a guidance teacher because I was genuinely like, I could do, like, I could put that right. I could, like,
You could do a
take
better
that-
job than he
I
did.
could, I could take that experience and be like,
Yeah.
Just how
Okay.
you don't be a guidance
well,
teacher.
or kind of like how, like, support kids to
Yeah.
do what they want, or like to, at least pursue their dreams and give them a chance to, like, not turn around to them and go, oh, well, that's not good enough. Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, you kind of got funneled down traditional routes that to them made sense, but their experience of the world was 50 years ago or whatever, growing up, and yeah, it's not. There's also this idea that you once you leave school, you have to go straight into college or university because that's the thing to do. And I think for a lot of people, and myself included, I would have benefited from just going and working for 2 years.
Yeah.
And gaining experience with people, things, like just stuff you didn't get being at school.
yeah.
And
I
then make a choice to
wholeheartedly agree.
go further qualification or down a different route altogether, because so many of the things that we're all doing now, including this,
Yeah.
we don't have any training in. We don't have any formal training in.
To be fair, this didn't really exist.
Actually, no,
it was radio, not podcasting as a concept didn't exist.
Yeah, but
No.
I mean, ostensibly, there's always been, like, as much as I'm doing something now that I love, and, like, the people that love me are supporting me through that at an age where, like, logistically I shouldn't be able to be at uni full time, but luckily I am because of, like, thank God for them, It's the most religious thing I've ever said. Like, I might say hashtag blessed in a minute, but you know what? Like,
We'll cut you out if you do that.
yeah,
no,
thanks.
that's it.
Like, quite right. In fact, just cut me. Period. But yeah, like, I shouldn't be in a position to do this, and I often kind of, like, when you're awake at 2 a.m. thinking about your life, like, wonder what it would have been like if I'd had the opportunity to, or if I'd just, like, fronted up and said, well, actually, I don't care what you think, and done it. And I wonder what my life would have been like. But also, you can't go through life thinking that way. You've got to, like, do what, like, I'm only in the position that I'm in because of the things that I've done. So
No choosing risk management, no Scotland history podcast.
potentially,
Perhaps not, yeah. The
um,
butterfly effect.
yeah, there's
Wow.
so many people right now would be going, yeah, that would be nice.
So, just bringing back round to the podcast, do you have like a favourite? I don't want to say a favourite podcast episode. That seems too obvious. But is there like a favourite story within one of these podcasts or a lesson from it that you
A lesson. Oh, that's good. Whew.
can always come back to this one? You can let it percolate in the back of your
Okay.
head.
Yeah. Let's let that percolate, because there's a couple of things that I really like But probably I would need to think about how to vocalise of what they are.
Okay, then. Club media for Broomhill. There's obviously, you were doing club media for Broomhill, then you weren't, and now you're back again.
Mhm.
We won't talk about the bit in the middle,
Probably
obviously.
best not.
How did you actually get involved with the folks at Broomhill?
That's so going back to maybe like 2016, 2017, one of the two. I can't entirely remember. I had been desperately trying to get a job at Kilmarnock for years.
Big Kelly fanboy.
Yes, for my sins. Well, actually, you know what? Recently, it's fine.
They gave you a birthday present, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It was nice, kind of them. But ultimately, I wanted to do some form of kind of football media. Like, I really love football, and I love communications because, again, nerd. And I wanted to try and do something that was a bit different to the usual, like, eyes emoji, pen in hand thing. And
Said with such disdain.
Yeah.
well, I mean, like,
I love it.
no shade, but I mean,
Shade.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you said it's rude, not me. But yeah, like, I went and started working for Broomhill, doing their program, and then sort of started, like, in a way that is entirely my personality, be like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, and then I just started doing it. Eventually that, like, grew and grew and grew and grew until I had, like, the entire, like, club branding portfolio and had made the badge and was doing the kits and all this kind of thing, and it was super cool. And I really loved, like, Broomhill's a really little club. Like, at the moment, a lot of people hear that I work for Broomhill and be like, oh, Broomhill, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be immediately on Pie and Bovril, like, oh, this guy thinks... Broomhill's a tiny wee club run by, like, 3 or 4 people that, fair enough, doesn't have a huge fan base, doesn't have a huge history in the game, but are run by, like, really passionate people that want to try and do cool stuff and have fun. And they give me a lot of freedom to do what I want to do and to try things and to experiment and to kind of take on, you know, like, things that you wouldn't get away with at league clubs and stuff like that. And that's partially why I was there so long and why I'm back now, is because I had kind of opportunities at league clubs and things like that, and I've worked with a couple of clubs in that interim period where I went in and it was very, this is what we want to do, this is why we want to do it, we have sponsors who expect this, blah 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 blah, and I was like, yeah, all right. And I did that, and it was fine, and it was fun to an extent, but there wasn't that element of...
Like, sort of creative freedom.
Yeah, there wasn't that element of creative freedom. There wasn't that element of chaos. Like, the chaos is something with Broomhill that I really thrive on.
Right.
It's very fun to do that job, and it's very fun to be a part of every journey that they go on, even when, you know, you don't necessarily agree with what they're doing or whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, that's what we're not talking about, but, you know, like, even when they did that, I was like, that's a great idea, do that, that's cool. So fundamentally, it's really nice to work with such a small number of stakeholders.
Yeah.
And supporters come to you because of results on the pitch and things that you're doing in the community, but also the way that you communicate about the club, and I think that's pretty cool. It's a fun way to spend your weekends as well.
It's all part of the ecosystem. It's basically how you kind of tie the performance of the team and the behind the scenes stuff.
The better the team does, like, I've noticed it since I've been at the club. Since I've been there, we've had 4 or 5, maybe 6. No, 4 or 5 managers. And the better, you know, that period in 2019-20, we got to the 5th round of the Scottish Cup. We had Hibs on TV, which was just the most mind-boggling thing I've ever done professionally, because there was literally 2 people putting that entire game together. Like, we did all the ticketing, we did, you know, we essentially, like, both of us took a week off work.
Yeah.
Like, we both worked in the same place, and we just essentially went into work and sat and, like, did all of this stuff, and we're off work. And it was so much fun. But yeah, we put that game together with 2 or 3 people, and well, it was 3 to be fair to everybody what was involved. But you know, like 3 people to organise a game where you've got, I can't remember what the attendance was, but it was at least 3,000 up at Alloa, and the TV were there, and you know there was like media considerations that we don't have usually. You know, like 90% of the time you're lucky if you have one paper that wants to speak to the manager. In this case, we had like a media huddle and things that I'd never had to do, but had enough knowledge from other jobs that I've had in order to be able to put that together, which was really useful. But that element of chaos, we didn't think, right, we need to bring in a PR company to handle this or something. We were like,
We can do ourselves.
almost, we were like, what's the worst that can happen? People think we're unprofessional, and then we turn around and go, well, 2 of us did this, suck it.
Yeah.
You know, like that was basically the thinking. We were like, well, how many people do you need to run an event like this? Turns out more. You know, like we had other volunteers as well. I'm talking specifically about, you know, like the ticketing systems.
Yeah.
Going to briefings with the SFA and, you know, like match commanders for football, for like police and stuff like that, which I didn't even know was a thing. I'm sitting in this meeting going, why are you telling me this? But yeah, like it was, I like the idea of getting back to that, but I don't know if we ever will. But it's at the moment, you know, the manager that was there at that time has come back in, is building a squad. We're sitting 5th in the Lowland League after 5 or 6 games, which is pretty great, into the second round of the Cup and the draw for the Scottish Cup. And you get, like, it's the first round draw, just that looked impressive, but it's, you know, you've got to go through a game. But even if I think to come back to what I was trying to say, it's easier to communicate about a club that's doing well on the pitch.
Yeah.
So it's good to have somebody in the club that knows the club and knows what kind of players they need to bring in and is really confident about their style. And we have that with Stephen Swift at the moment, so that's really nice to be able to go in. And, you know, like, I know what his expectations are of me as well, which is very useful, because sometimes you go in and managers in football often have very specific expectations about what their media team will do, and they believe, for rightly or wrongly, that they have control over the output of the club. So I went for an interview at a club which will remain nameless that was in the Premiership, and during that interview it was like, so when you go to away games and you've got to stay at a hotel, you have to stay in a different hotel so that you don't have as much access to the players. Your access to the players is set by the manager and all this kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like an interesting, I hate to say the word challenge, but, you know, it sounds like it would be quite interesting. Okay, cool. But I went away and I was thinking about it and I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
But it's so that ultimately you don't have a chummy relationship with the players, but
There's a bit of separation there.
yeah, but there's other ways to do it.
Yes, that has come across as a slightly odd way to do things. And you did logo design?
I've done. Broomhill have had 3 or 4 logos since I've been there.
All
so I
designed by you?
designed 2 of them,
Right.
and then they changed it last season. And then this season we were lucky enough to work with a designer called Martin Leroy, who is just like an amazing logo designer and has done a lot of work on like kit design and stuff for Kilmarnock and that in the past. And every time I've designed a logo for Broomhill, I've asked him to do it first, and then like for one reason or another, the board have like ended up being like, you do it. I'm like, all right. So I'm really pleased with what he's put together, and it feels like a badge that we can take forward for the next 600 years. Arbitrary.
Yeah. It's a nice badge, but
It
haven't
is.
you had a lot of people complain and say that it looks like the Air one?
Yeah, but it's got a saltire on it.
Yeah.
That's literally the only. It's
Well, the
literally the only
similarity, yeah.
similarity. It's not even in the same place.
No.
It does really, like we noticed the other day, it does really look like the Lowland League logo, which I
All right.
designed.
Huh?
And at the time, it didn't really occur to me, but I noticed it the other day because I put the badges together on a graphic, and I was like, oh well.
Eh.
But ultimately, like there's that design element, like going through the design process with Martin on the badge. It was about trying to like not create a history for the club. The club's been going since 2014, so it's
That's
still
quite a
really
while.
still really young though. And ultimately, we've gone through a lot of iterations. We've gone through, we moved from playing in Maryhill to playing in Alloa to playing in Cumbernauld to playing in Dumbarton now, where we're going to be for the next at least 5 years. And it's about kind of saying that we want to like put down roots in Dumbarton, stay in Dumbarton, and like develop a history there. So the badge is to sort of bring in elements of Strathclyde and elements of our history in Glasgow. So it's got the fish and it's got the Broomhill tree that's on the Broomhill Primary badge where the team originally started as a school team. So it was nice to be able to bring in design elements to it rather than the badge before last season it looked like something off a school blazer because it had been designed by X number of sort of rarely heard from board members that all like it was an absolute victim of groupthink.
Yeah.
And it looked like a sort of like Pro Evo like generated
Oh.
badge.
Yeah.
And it was fine, it did the job, but it didn't tell you anything.
No.
So it's really nice to have a badge that, like I say, Martin's put in a lot of hard work and a lot of iterations of me and board members going, well, could you do that, could you do that? And he's been very patient, so I appreciate him greatly.
So I recently saw a post on the Broomhill page, given that you are the media team and that Palpatine is also the Senate. But
You managed to get one in there, well done.
No, I did. But yeah, can you avail our viewers and listeners as to what the content of that social media post was?
Yeah, at the moment we're looking for people to come in and volunteer with the club across everything, to be honest. We are playing in Dumbarton, at Dumbarton Stadium under the Rock. It's a lovely place to play and watch football. We're looking for volunteers for match day operations, so that's turnstiles, stewarding as much as stewarding is needed at Broomhill games. It's just having folk there to do bits and pieces. Specifically for myself, I'm looking for media team volunteers. So we're looking for videographers, photographers. We've been very lucky today that we've managed to speak to somebody who might be coming in to be like a match day host for our video content, which is something that we're looking to kind of ramp up over this season. And I'm looking forward to meeting her. But generally speaking, we're looking for... I've always had the opinion with Broomhill that there's loads of people out there that probably want to do stuff in football that don't want to come and take photos of men running after a ball, but maybe want to like take photos of, like the sort of faces and the sort of the things that make football, the intangibles, and try and capture like behind the scenes and what makes
The pie counter.
Yeah, like just kind of give an idea of what it's like. Non-league football is insanely special. Like it's so captivating and it's almost addictive. Once you go to a couple of games, you're suddenly hooked on this world where you can hear each other, like you can hear the players shouting at each other, and if you shout at the players, they might shout at you, all this kind of thing. And it's a very strange, captivating world that you get sort of sucked into. And I want to give people an idea of what that's like. And I've never quite been able to put it across properly. Probably more due to like time and, like manpower or person power and, like having enough money to like, put the equipment in that we need and all that kind of thing. But the more volunteers we have, the more we can like look at doing interesting little like side documentaries or not documentaries necessarily, but like documenting our match days. And the idea with our match day host is to take the game away from being minute by minute updates, which are fun to an extent, but the way that social media is laid out at the moment, algorithmically, they get lost super quickly.
Yeah.
So at the moment, we're looking to try and introduce like a little pre-match show that's very, very hastily cut together, like a very, very quick intro, an interview with the manager, maybe a player, and giving an idea of what the game's going to be like. Something at half-time in a similar vein, and then something at full-time. And then potentially, if we've got access to that person over the course of the game, maybe they can like get on video or get on Spaces on X or whatever it's called now, or Threads, if we ever get into actually using that, and things like that, and like sort of give people an idea of what it's like to be at the game rather than just seeing text updates.
Yeah.
So give me a shout.
What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Either messaging us via the club's Twitter, or Threads if that has a messaging function, or Facebook or Instagram. Everything is Broomhill FC, or getting in touch with me directly by email, which is michael@broomhillfc.com.
There you go. Get on it, people.
But like I say, it's very much like I view it as kind of a casual thing. People are volunteering their time, and if they want to come in and do something vaguely artistic that takes 20 minutes, never be heard from again, then they're more than welcome to.
Yeah, it's the funny thing with volunteers, because we work with volunteers for my job as well, and you can't expect too much. They're there to gain maybe a little bit of experience. It doesn't mean you're ever going to see them again.
Yeah.
Then you get some people who become very enthused with what it is you're doing, be it football or fisheries, and they become weekly or they become regulars.
Yeah.
And those, no harm to the people who come in and out of things. The regulars are the people who have the greatest impact on your world and become the most useful people. If you can rely on someone to be there to do some video work or take photos, so you've got, you can put social media stuff out for the next 2 weeks or until the next match day, that's going to be such a bonus.
Yeah, it's huge for us, but also I think especially when you're asking for volunteers, like Broomhill aren't in a position to pay people.
No.
Because I take all their money. No, but we're not in a position to pay media volunteers because we're a little team, but we're also conscious of people wanting to come in, and that's why we're trying to offer as much creative freedom as we can, because we want people to come in and get that enthusiasm for us by doing their thing, rather than us coming in and going, well, okay, you're handy with a camera, so we need somebody to film the game. That's not necessarily somebody's wheelhouse or even somebody's interest. So we'd rather have somebody come in and do something that they're super passionate about.
Absolutely.
That gains them the experience that they need either professionally or just for themselves. And like I say, hopefully that gives them the bug.
Yeah. Can I circle back round to our question we asked half an hour ago? It's been percolating away.
Yeah, go on then.
Is there something that comes to mind that stands out from... I mean, how many episodes do you have now?
It's about 65-ish. The podcast's been going since 2018, and over that time we've had about maybe 85 episodes.
Right.
But I went through the feed relatively recently and cut things that either were too short or were a specific time period. Like one Halloween, we had loads of different podcasters and contributors and stuff read stories and whatnot, from Scottish authors or people with an obliquely Scottish vibe and that kind of thing. And over time, those were nice to those were lovely to have at the time, and we really appreciated them. And ultimately, I'll do something with them. But at the moment, they don't really fit the feed. So there's 65, 66 main episodes.
Right.
And we re-release ones as bonus content fairly regularly. So there's quite a lot to choose from, and that's probably why the question was tough. But probably my favourite episodes to do are the ones about con artists.
Okay.
We've got quite a few. There's one called The Greatest Con Man, funnily enough, which is about Graham McGregor, who was a fake army colonel and invented this basically invented a country for people to invest in, and took their money and buggered off. And there's one about a fake medium. It's called The Medium. These episodes aren't particularly imaginatively named.
They do, the names do what is on the tin.
I like to
of
think
audio,
so. The Medium is about a fake spirit medium called Helen Duncan, who supposedly predicted the sinking of a Royal Navy ship,
Right.
but supposedly the ship had sank a week before, and she just found out about it. But because it was the middle of the Second World War, in order to preserve morale, they
that
hadn't
kind of thing.
told people
Yeah.
about it. So she had
Right.
found out about it, used it as a prediction, and then had created this
Gained some
scenario where,
notoriety.
yeah, she became famous. But she was tried as a witch, and people have kind of come out.
What?
Yeah, there's this really, like, I didn't really go into it very much in the episode, but Helen Duncan, there's a whole campaign for her to be pardoned because she was tried as a witch, and because she's a woman, and because this and because that, and because people believe she is an actual spirit medium or was an actual spirit medium.
Mm-hmm.
She was none of those. Well, she was a woman. And that's where it ends. She was an absolute con artist. She would produce ectoplasm, which was like she would pull it out of her. This is disgusting, by the way. Trigger warning for those who have this specific phobia. She would like dip tights into almost like egg wash,
Right.
and stuff it into her, like stuff it down her gullet to the point that it was past her throat, and then cough it up so that it looked like ghostly ectoplasm coming out of her mouth. And people are still like, oh, she was a genuine spirit medium. She was at it. But I love people who are at it. I love telling stories about people who are at it, because it gives you such an easy way to go. Like, you take people down the garden path and then turn it round on them really easily,
Yeah.
and it's really fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my favourite episode that I've ever done was probably The Poison Isle, which is about Grunt. I don't know how to pronounce this. It's Grunnard Island,
Oh, right. Yes.
where the British Army tested anthrax during the Second World War.
Okay.
And this was the Grunnard Island is about a mile off mainland Scotland, and it was presumed safe to test anthrax gas. I don't know how much you know about anthrax. Anthrax, when it's weaponized, disperses as a gas which hangs in the air and floats. So it
Right.
just started
Gets
to float.
windy, you know.
It just started to float towards the mainland. But it really, like, making the podcast, I've really begun to understand, and this is going to sound a wee bit, like, not controversial, but it really makes me understand how much people in government and how much people in power do not care
Mm.
about people living in areas of, like, I'm not just talking about Scotland, but anywhere that working class or working people live, they just don't care. And I think Grunnard Island and the Poison Isle, the way that we've told that, is a very effective episode for displaying that, because it's just shocking what they did. And, we're only talking 80 odd years ago, so it's probably a bit of a depressing one to end on, but
No,
Trying-
not at all. It's a good hook for people to go and
yeah, that's
Go and
true.
listen to that.
Yeah, it's a good episode. There's also a YouTube version of it, which is like
Right,
a little.
okay.
I was watching a lot of Adam Curtis documentaries at that point, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of stock footage used to illustrate points that they don't necessarily illustrate.
Then what, a wee cartoon cloud of anthrax floating over Scotland or something like that.
What do I look like, a talent? No, there was that. Well, funnily enough, the thing with the Grunnard Island thing was at the time that the MOD were testing it, they filmed it in colour. So the footage that I've used, it's from the Imperial War Museum, and again, I don't do these things to profit on the YouTube videos, but I wanted, like, when I found this footage, I was like, I have to be able to show people this,
Mm.
because it is literally them. The idea was that they would test the anthrax on sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So they cleared everybody that did live on this island, and we're talking maybe, like, I don't know, maximum of 10 folk off the island, and then put these sheep on it and left them to die of anthrax exposure. but right up until the 80s, it wasn't safe to go. And I don't even know that it's safe now.
Right. Okay.
It's still a poisoned island.
Yeah.
And it's, again, you can see it from, I can't remember the name of the town that it's closest to, I'm afraid, but I have a terrible memory for somebody that produces a history podcast, but
Well, you produced 65 of them, or more,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than that, so we'll forgive
Yeah.
little lapses here
that's
and there.
true, yeah. I can remember at least 3 sentences from each one, so that'll do.
On that note,
Photos.
we would have the photos to show. However, we did the photo shoot just before this episode, and funnily enough, linking back to something that you had said at the very start of the episode about basically growing up in Alloway, that we went round the historically significant places of Alloway, such as Burns Cottage and the Old Kirk and
Brigadoon.
the Brigadoon and stuff like that as well.
That was a really nice touch. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Also helps us local.
yeah,
Yeah, that is a bonus.
It's actually
Yeah,
quite a
that
nice
was-
amble about with the cameras.
Yeah,
It was really nice, and like it's not something that I've ever done before, like face for radio and all that. But it was nice to kind of get a chance to sort of go and like hang out with you guys in these places and bore you with stories about like gravestones and mort safes.
Well, yeah,
and
it's
whatnot.
funny you say that.
Yeah.
I actually managed to get a few photos of you regaling us with the tales from the
It
graveyard.
became a little sort of almost like a tourist operation
Yeah.
for you.
Well,
Yeah.
you
You just sort of you very seamlessly went into that mode
The
where you
tour
were
guide
given
modes.
us
Yeah.
a guide of.
my voice
Alloway.
changes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's and my hands.
Had your hands start
going
going.
like that.
That's 5 stars on TripAdvisor.
That would be wonderful.
if your tour
Hey,
operation
you
in air
don't
existed.
have to come on a tour to rate that company
Yeah,
5
yeah.
stars on TripAdvisor. Anyway,
There's a loophole.
Aye.
for me, yeah.
So we will regroup once we've had a chance to go, because I've felt Daryl's shoes sitting in hosting the podcast. I've also filled in his shoes by taking photos for the podcast.
He's a
as well.
crap photographer anyway. so you're not-
I thought you were going to rise above that.
Oh, I
I've
thought
done
you
so
meant
well.
David.
No. So yeah, we will. What we'll do is we'll get a look at our photos. We'll have an edit,
Mhm.
and we will maybe try and get in a Zoom call,
Yeah, that sounds
So we
great.
can
Yeah,
do
that
a-
sounds fantastic.
a grand review. Because what we usually do is sit here with a laptop. There'll be 2 sets of photos. I'll go, here are mine, and we'll sort of click through them and talk through some of what we're trying to achieve and what we're going through at the time. Daryl or David would do the same. Then you pick a best one.
Oh, you have to pick
No,
the best.
We've not done
Oh,
that
we
yet,
haven't
and
done
it was
that,
no.
Tyrion Boyd's suggestion. I've always thought it, but I've always been scared to do it because I know Daryl's a better photographer than I am. So I don't want to week in, week out get battered.
To be fair, he hasn't been featured in the Rolling Stones. So
To be fair, he hasn't.
yeah, that's
And nor had I
lot
until
of the
about half
press.
or 2 hours ago.
Actually, Michael, that is you.
That is, I'm a huge fan. Not of
I-
myself, just to be
But,
clear.
I love the shirt once again. Nice wee photo in front of Rabbie Burns' cottage. I actually kind of
Yeah,
remarkable to
it's-
think that he was only 37 and a half when he died. I mean, he did, shag and catch pneumonia or whatever it was, and aye.
He was actually booked on Michael will probably correct me on this. He was actually booked to go to I think Jamaica. He was booked onto the ship to go to Jamaica because my girlfriend and I visited the oldest library in Scotland, which is somewhere in the Crieff area, and that was one of the records that they talked about. And there was he was not like a lot of Scots. He was a proud Scot, but he was quite happy to be in a foreign climate and nice sun. But he passed shortly before that ship was meant to sail him, I think, as it turned out.
Kind of. He can't, as far as I recall, which I could be wrong. He was supposed to be going out because the woman that he was infatuated with, whose name was Nancy McElhose, she had moved out to
Incredible name.
Nancy McElhose is a perfectly normal name, Dallin.
Maybe back then.
We can't all have portmanteau names.
Wow.
So he had planned to move out to be with her, and then kind of over time received word that she'd got back together with her estranged husband who was out there,
Oh dear.
and cancelled it. But like, there's a lot of kind of controversy about it, because obviously going to Jamaica at that time, he would have been going to work on like a plantation, which would have been a slaveholding plantation. So there's a lot of question marks about exactly how, I don't know what the best way to put it is, exactly how sort of egalitarian he was as a person,
Yeah.
which I don't know that we'll ever really get to the bottom of, because all you have are his writings and they're quite egalitarian and stuff. So there's nothing. I don't know. Like, I don't want to get into a debate about it because it's controversial enough without.
Aye, and we're here to see your photos, so
Yes.
speaking of which,
I love this photo. Like,
Oh,
wow.
I mean,
like
look
that.
at that. Look at the sun.
That's imposing.
The sun is shining on you.
Who is that man?
Yeah, so obviously,
I look like I'm about to take a free kick or like do a speech at the Tory Party conference, but
no, it's incredible. We get the wee curve of the house there and the thatch, and that is obviously one of the alleged cardinal sins of photography: shooting into the sun when you don't have to. But
I like it. It's a very pleasing image.
you get the god rays and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think it looks cracking. Like, I feel bad for you that you didn't have a better subject to put in that photo.
I like that.
The chatting to your pal Sam, just wondering what the hell is he doing.
Yeah, that's.
So this was like the first where I had to bring up the greens and the kind of just the colours in general, because I noticed it's probably I think I'd said this not in the context of on the podcast, but I noticed it, and it's probably because I've used so much Ektar film that really boosts the colours that I thought that the kind of photos like the OM1 were a wee bit kind of too desaturated for my liking, so it had the effect of, and I think as I said to you yesterday, Michael, it's made you look extremely ginger because of the way I've had to boost the colours.
To be fair, I am quietly super ginger, so
there you go.
it doesn't necessarily come across in my day-to-day life, but the minute the sun hits me, I am my father's son. So
And we got a nice wee shot of your wee crow or raven.
I believe that is a crow. It's a meme. All of my tattoos basically are memes. So
Except the OMD photo.
yes, that's true.
So you would have been. What was it you were saying that when you went to Alloway Primary round the corner, you would have been detention or expelled because you walked on that wall?
No, you would just have got into trouble. Like, we don't want to go
Overboard.
like, like, fair enough, it was a strict enough school, but I don't think it would be quite at the stage of you getting expelled for walking on a wall. But I said to you when we were taking the photo, it is surprisingly high.
Yeah.
Like, when I jumped down, I jarred my foot, and I was like, oh my god, look at me in my mid-30s.
Crippling yourself. Yeah, it's you can't really tell, but the road was also at a slope as well. So I think I've done all right. See, using these fancy digital cameras with the wee rule of thirds thingies in them. And I leaked this one to you last night, of course, but
I love
like
that.
that. It was to do with an anniversary, that wee fox statue, but yeah.
Something very
I really wish
wholesome
I'd
about
done
it.
something different with my hair.
I can't remember what my direction for to you was for this one, but I think it was.
I think that may have just been the point that I had lost the will to like take myself seriously and was just touching up every statue that we came to.
Yeah. But of course, shades, and again, I brought the greens up a wee bit because nice and vibrant. And here we go. Speaking of which, I should talk.
Don't know if the mic's picking up my my local ice cream van playing Green Sleeves, just in case it's
It's not a night for ice cream, is it?
No,
Never a dull moment.
no.
Oh, I love that. Sorry, I'm just seeing that. That's cracking.
Talking to one of the two twadogs.
It's almost like a
Eh.
POV from the second dog's vantage point there.
Yeah. Like, why is he talking to Ian and not me?
It's telling secrets.
Aye,
I petted the other one.
he did. I think the next one is. Oh no, next one's. So basically, there is one in the folder that you'll obviously get access to.
Oh, lovely.
That is you kind of like offering a treat to the wee duck that we're kind of getting the POV from.
Mm-hmm.
Point of view, using jargon. There, that's your cool kind of come see Michael Park at these dates.
Yeah, that's. Mm-hmm. If I'm ever going to release a Fuzz album, that's
Yep.
that's the cover.
The one thing I could have done is get rid of that lamp in the corner, but I mean, other than that, I really like that photo. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
a wee kind of climbing thingy by the.
It was kind of
rugby
like a
pitch.
style, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I like this.
The rugby pitch is there. And this is the wee path that takes you basically from Burns Cottage to the Birthplace Museum. This is
Mhm.
you getting stalked by the gigantic Tiamus mouse.
That's I really really like that.
Yep. And you're like, no, I don't know what's going on here. And you can see me. Well, just
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Like an 80s TV show, like a car or something, so you get caught in the window of it. And of course, I've already posted this next one on social, so this is it's creeping on you, and you've just discovered a gargantuan mouse is stalking you.
That's
It
fantastic.
reminded me of when we were taking that photo. It reminded me of. Do you remember Trigger Happy TV?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sketch where the guy's walking down the street and the three mice are all like following him with newspapers, and every time he stops, they like put the newspaper up in front of their faces, and
Mm-hmm.
that is absolutely cracking.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Again, another wee one with the greens kind of boosted just to kind of. Because it was a really sunny day, but I thought the photos didn't really reflect that. There's actually another few photos I took of you, candid, just being a right proper goth with your black jeans and your
Doc Martens.
coming up that graveyard, you know.
All right, like sorry, I don't come for how you dress.
Aye. But yeah, no, I thought that was actually pretty neat. Getting you just kind of admiring the history of the kind of.
That is good. That is like. I very rarely. I'm one of these people that tries to avoid photos because I'm always like, oh, I look terrible in that, or like I've done it like 3 times since we've been having this conversation. Like, oh my god, I want to have done something different with my hair or whatever. But I really like. I'm thoroughly enjoying these.
That's you peering through the window of the old Kirk.
Yes.
I might do a wee edit of like an orange glow coming out. You know.
Yeah,
But
we've never really done anything other than enhancements or to images. We've never gone full creative like with any of the portrait stuff. 'Cause we've always tried to keep it quite honest, but we never discussed that as a rule for this, and there's nothing to stop like a green glow coming out of the Kirk and something just poking out from behind the tree just to really sell it. But it's portraiture, so but we've played quite loose with the phrase portrait, I think, because a lot of them are contextual as well as portraits, and it's not just about someone's face. When we got into the graveyard, this is sort of when I caught up with you guys, and Michael, you sort of went into full I'm going to tell you about this place mode. You sort of very easily fell into that There we go.
Yeah, I went full tour guide.
Full tour. That was
yeah.
the phrase I was looking for there. Yeah.
That's
Hands- hands
the
all over
whole
the place.
hand movement thing. Yeah, that was the. What was it? You were looking through the window bit into here, but bizarrely we noticed that the actual only about a quarter, a half of the church, the kirk rather, is accessible.
Yeah.
Whereas the other bit, there was this big kind of crypt thing, but that was shut over with a gate.
Yeah, and you guys weren't up for me trying to jimmy the lock, so
This something really big. What were those again? The iron kind of.
I'm not sure whether they are, but they're technically morp safes. So morp safes were things that people of a certain affluence would put over their graves to stop grave robbers coming and either stealing their goods or stealing their bodies. There was a real sort of satanic panic level of worry about body snatchers in the mid 1800s.
Well, was it Burke and Hare as well?
Yeah, they were. Funnily enough, I just put a rebroadcast of my episode about Burke and Hare out in the Scotland feed. Just still haven't been an actual episode. But yeah, Burke and Hare were pretty interesting because they started off with a guy staying in one of them owned a doss house essentially, and somebody died living in it, and instead of getting rid of the body, they realized that they could sell it for medical science, and then they realized that was good money, so they started digging up bodies, and then they got a bit bored of that, so they started killing people instead.
That's a move, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. There's a really good short story called The Body Snatchers by Robert Louis Stevenson that's it's on Project Gutenberg, and you can get the book of it for free. It's really, really good. It's quite interesting.
This is you pointing the detail, whatever that is. It looks like a fish or something anyway.
I think that was a skull and crossbones, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
there was some discussion about the skull and
Yeah.
crossbones. That's quite a common feature apparently in graveyards across Scotland.
Yeah. Going back to, again, I'm terrible with dates, but going back to the 17th, 18th, 19th century, graveyards and gravestones were almost used as a reminder of people's mortality rather than, not exclusively, sometimes it was, in memoriam, Big John, etc., gone but not forgotten and all this kind of crap. But a lot of the times it was it'll be you next kind of vibes. And I quite like that actually, because I think it's it's to remind people that potentially sinning in this life isn't as effective and forgivable as people might think. Maybe I'm being too maudlin.
Presbyterian about it, and
two later seasons of MASH.
I'm pretty sure that's what you were talking about there in that photo.
That looks about right.
The third one that's closer, and you're actually kind of playing with your ring on your finger.
Excuse me, right, okay. It's yes, I do tend to play with my ring when I get nervous.
Thank you for the clarity there.
Imagine desecrating a graveyard for that. That's you. I think that was you actually talking about the whole skull and crossbones frightening people into their own mortality. But that was the last graveyard one, obviously. Here is a super ginger photo of you going, see that? That's Burns Monument.
That is
Nice, yeah.
That is true.
There's one where I've got you just kind of looking at it, but I like the whole kind of point. Maybe the kind of autumnal looking, even though this was
Late August.
Late August, yeah. But it was a really, really lovely day to be out as well. It was
a very nice evening. Yeah.
Yeah. Really sort of golden light everywhere and all that kind of thing, and it's very pleasant. And yes, that is Burns Monument. That is very true.
Though it was sadly closed, because I think that would have been cool to get some photos of
Yeah.
you, like, at the actual thing. I believe
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
that's the last photo.
Magnificent.
There you go.
Wonderful.
I'm a big fan. I'm a wind turbine of your work.
Excellent. I see what you did there.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I'm really glad that nobody really acknowledged it. You can cut that out.
So can you?
Oh wow!
Can you now see? You can see mine now.
Oh yeah,
That is really cool.
Wonderful. Good.
that is.
So I'm not usually the biggest fan of black and white as a medium, but for some things it helps just to take the colours. I think it helps simplify an image, and this was not a particularly complex image. We just got you're essentially got almost like a double portrait, but pulling the colour out of it, I think, just helped it. So there's you and Master Rabi in the background, and this next one I think
Yeah.
talks about the birthplace of a genius. Now, who we're talking about here? That's for
It's
the
up to the viewer.
it's up to the
slash
viewers,
listener,
100% up to
yeah.
the viewers.
My money's on Rabi, but
I don't know. It's a good plug for your podcast. It's a very very good podcast.
oh, thank you, Struan.
I'm still
Have you caught up now? You've had 3 weeks to get it.
I'm still thoroughly enjoying it.
Oh, thanks, man. Oh wow.
And
That's cool.
I've always, I mean, for the most part, through a lot of these shoots, I've always managed to get some flowers in the shots at some point, and it's getting increasingly difficult as we go forward down into winter. But this is in front of the museum centre there, and they've got a wonderful selection of wildflowers, kind of meadow. So this is just a kind of a fairly off the cuff one as you walk to a bench that we'd ask you to go and sit on, but. Yeah, the colours were quite nice there.
That's
And
gorgeous.
then framing, I would, if someone wanted to be critical of the framing of it, I would take that in the chin. But again, just a little bit of colour in the foreground, and it's probably a non-traditional portrait, but we've got you sat on the bench there, and you can just make out that smile in your face. I'm not sure what was going on,
Yeah.
but it was a nice afternoon
I
for a
was
wee
just
seat on the bench.
enjoying your cracking chat. I really like that as well. Like, I really like. I don't know if you guys have ever seen any documentaries presented by a guy called Jonathan Meades.
Don't think so.
No.
He's like an architecture critic and a food critic and stuff, and he's very like verbose and BBC Four. But a lot of his documentaries are shot like he'll be, like standing behind a tree or something.
Right.
So the camera will be set up like a normal documentary shot, but he just won't quite be in the shot. And it really reminded, like, I really like that. It's,
Yeah.
oh, look at me.
It almost like you have to
Between
look.
the legs on the bench.
So then this next one was because it was a
That's-
particularly tall bench, and you were
It was
particularly
a very tall bench. Like, just to be clear, I'm quite a tall person.
Yeah.
And
when you're
my
a
feet
good
didn't
6
touch the
footer.
ground. Yeah, 6'2" Struan, but let's not argue over semantics.
Hey, inches count.
Well, that's what they tell me. But yeah, like when I was sat back, my feet didn't touch the ground.
And it was quite an
which is quite
interesting.
unusual experience.
Yeah, and it was quite an interesting bench. It sort of had the stained glass that kind of dissects the back plate there, which was quite nice in the light as well. So it was this was quite heavily cropped just to get the you centered and remove some of the foreground that was distracting. But then we move on to this next one. We're back into the graveyard, and this is where you were going into your full kind of storytelling mode about the significance of some of the things we were seeing.
That's so cool.
If I remember rightly, this was the moment that I think I got a photo just kind of from a lower angle. It's also it's in my like wider selection, but it's at that point that I think I said something about how you were looking really intense. You're like, oh yeah, I don't have any sunglasses on, Folk can see that.
Oh yeah, I have a real problem with remembering that I'm wearing sunglasses. So I'll go like I think you've probably seen me do it before, Dallin, like coming into the university
Yeah.
and sitting down and going, "It's really dark in here. What's going on?" and refusing to understand that I'm the problem.
Mhm.
It's one of those like sunglasses are even on a bright day. If you have to then go and speak to somebody who you don't know, you have to take them off. I always feel to be able to look the person in the eye properly. Otherwise, there's a disconnect between you and that person. There's something that I don't know, almost feels dishonest in a way for some reason.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm shifty AF anyway, so like you know.
What did you do with the colours in that one?
I think
Because that looks really kind of analog-esque.
yes, I sort of desaturated quite a lot of the browns
Mm-hmm.
in that end of the spectrum. The greens I think have remained fairly true to what we saw in the afternoon. I just desaturated some of the kind of the browny kind of orange end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So I mean, there was a couple of different color grades in this. I think this next sequence all kind of follow a similar kind of vein.
Oh wow.
So
that's great. I mean, for a boy with low self-esteem, you're really helping me not hate myself. So this is
so that's always a good yeah, because I'm very similar to you as well. I'm never particularly happy with how I look in photos, or probably just in real life generally. But photos sort of tend to bring it home a bit, so it's always nice when you see one that you like.
yeah, no, that's cracking, and it's really nice to like. That's a really iconic place for me. Like I was telling you guys when we were there, like I used to be absolutely fear of it when I was little because they liked it up green at night, and it was just really like it's easy to believe the story of Tam O'Shanter when you're in that space
Yeah,
because it's like even the road coming down to it is quite not spooky at night, but it's dark and it's overgrown with trees, and you can imagine in a storm and like with different paving on the roads and all that kind of thing, it would be a very intense place to be.
especially if you
So-
have a night out in the pub and you're on your way home, and you can start to see ghosts and ghouls
Yep.
chasing you.
Absolutely, and it's a fair old whack from where the assumption is that Tam O'Shanter takes place, which is the Tam O'Shanter on the High Street,
Yeah, it's
all the
not
way
not
out to
close.
Alloway. Like it's not nothing. So
No, you must be a good mile and a half, if not 2 miles, of walking to get there. So it's and when you've had however many pints in your local tavern, that's
The fresh air hitting them,
well, that's it. That's the danger. He could have stayed and drank there all night.
Yeah.
Maybe he should.
maybe you should. So then
Oh,
a
cool.
similar shot to David there, but that's you kicking into the Kirk, and we just sort of move on to this next one. This is you now. This was kind of difficult to edit because the light was from behind you, so it's very difficult to get your face with any sort of exposure without having to really blow out the highlights, and the highlights are blown. But you just sort of, you're not exactly pulling yourself up to view into the window here because you're sufficiently tall that you don't have to do that.
I think I was standing on a big brick or something. Wasn't
All
it?
right,
yeah.
Because it is quite a high window. Like it's maybe about, I don't know. It's maybe about like, I don't know, 5.5 feet up to the
yeah.
because it was about my shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one, like, there was a different window that I was trying to pull myself up to, and I think that was the one that Dallin got, where I'm literally like trying to
Yeah.
scrapple up this wall.
Aye.
That's cracking though. It's an interesting expression I'm pulling.
It's sort of quizzical.
Yeah,
You've seen something in there. There wasn't masses in there, but you've seen something.
well, it's my unholy acting talent.
So here we have you on the old bridge, and just enjoying the nice late evening glow. We've got the dune itself in the background and the trees and fairly bright sky there. And I think I've got two more. And this is an unusual portrait of the back of the head, but it's a nice view out over the river.
Mm.
And
It's a really lovely bit as well. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm sure a lot of people will have been to Brigadoon at some point, but it's a really, really nice place just to stand for 5 minutes and
Just hear the river.
yeah.
It's hard to believe that behind those trees is where the Air Rugby Club
yes,
play. It's like
Yeah.
man,
Mhm.
your next Valentine's Day card.
I know, right? That's excellent.
Because we both took this image because it was like such an obvious one as we walked back. So I did wonder if Alan, Mr. David Allen, would have it amongst his, but
It's in the wider selection.
it's in the wider selection.
It's
So
kind of like a sort of shoulders up from
That's
now
lovely.
on.
I can genuinely see me using that for a Valentine's card.
I
'Cause
might I might do the same, but I
nothing
might
is
get
not
something to do it.
self-important.
Yeah, I might
Just
go and recreate
Photoshop
it.
your face onto mine.
Yes. I mean, that evening I was wearing a similar shirt. I didn't have the leopards on it, I'll admit, but it was a stripy black and white affair. So
Yeah, it did occur to me, Stu, that when we came on this call, like, it's been bad weather for one day and we're both in knitwear.
yeah,
I don't know if that is Alan on it.
Yeah.
Like, we look like we're away to do some trad.
yeah.
Like, we're just the three pullovers singing the Wild Rover.
Aye. Anyway, Michael, you've already announced the social media handles, but just to refresh everyone's brains for the conclusion of this episode, where should people follow you / exit you /
Exceed me. That sounds more like excrete than you wanted it to.
Aye.
If you'd like to excrete me, you can follow me on Twitter at Be Quiet Michael, and I think I'm on Instagram as the same, and I think I'm on everything as Be Quiet Michael now.
Yeah. You got a
Um,
consistent social media.
Yeah, well, I thought that I would take my personal brand from what my mum used to say most to me as a child.
Yeah. Cool.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for coming along.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much
No,
for having me,
pleasure's
guys.
been ours. It's been great,
Man.
and I'm looking forward to listening to more of your podcasts.
Thank you.
And don't forget to subscribe to the official Portrait in a Podcast YouTube channel. And if you've enjoyed this episode, or the rest of the episodes in our canon that are on Spotify, drop us a wee 5-star review, or a wee 5-star canon.
Makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
It really helps.
It does.
Yeah.
I still don't know why. Still never quite discovered that.
Yeah, because none of us are making any money off this.
But it's great.
Yeah.
But it sort of inflates the small egos that we all have.
Yeah.
Because you've got to have some bit of an ego to do this. Because what you're effectively saying is, what I've got to say is important enough for people to listen to it for, at this point, 90 minutes. So obviously our ego is like 5 or 6 times as great as yours are.
And I don't know about that, Stern, to be honest. Yeah, I like to pour my ego into a really condensed 15 minutes. Like, I want you to come away hating me.
It's like
Why
that
did I say
juice
that?
that's double concentrated.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah, it's better for the environment.
We've just watered ours down.
Aye.
That's a great place to end it.
Right.
Thanks very much.
Bye.